It seems like the last 30 days is like a gift that keeps on giving. We got iPhone 13, we got the new iPad mini, the new lower end iPad, and then we had another Apple event with lots of exciting announcements. And now, today's the day, folks. The new MacBook Pros are here. Matt Gonzalez is going hands-on for us as our Apple Circle correspondent, live on the scene of the launch of new MacBook Pros. So we'll get his hot take and his first impressions shortly. But first, want to thank you guys all so much for listening and watching. If you didn't know, we have a video version of the Apple Circle podcast you can check out on the YouTube channel. It's called the Apple Circle Podcast Channel. We'll also leave it in the link of this podcast description. And we have a phone number you guys can text, call if you have thoughts, you have impressions, you have feedback. We want to hear from you. The number is 949-354-3508. You can call it, text us, let us know your thoughts. We've got a couple of good comments here we want to get to, including a new listener, which we really appreciate your feedback as well. But I guess without further ado, again, the big story here is new MacBook Pros. Matt, we've been waiting patiently. I have nothing to report on, so I'm going to turn it over to you. Tell me what you have now on your desk, and I want to hear it all. What are these first impressions? Tell me.
I've got it here. I went with the 14-inch MacBook Pro. This is in space gray. I've only been using it a little bit because we still have to work today, so there's like stuff we got to do. But yeah, this is everything I was hoping it would be. First impressions. Let's see. First, taking it out of the box, this thing is chunky. It is thick. It is, I mean, this is the 14-inch, but it feels much more substantial than the older version, and that's because it is. It's thicker. It's just physically bigger, but I'm really loving this squared-off design. It's very reminiscent of the, what were they called? The Santa Rosa MacBook Pro.
Yeah,
and the one
Santa
before
Rosa
that,
MacBook Pros, PowerBooks.
The PowerBooks. It gives you that vibe very much, and the bottom is kind of rounded, but then the top is very squared. It's an interesting look. I absolutely love it. I think they hit it out of the park there. You can see that MacBook Pro emblem on the bottom. I mean, there's not much here that I would want more. Now, there was only one thing that was kind of iffy before I actually got it in my hands. This plant is in the way, so you guys can't see this beautiful MacBook. But and that's the notch. How is the notch going to be? Is it going to be really distracting? Is it going to be a deal breaker? And I will say this. No, it is completely not a deal breaker. It is not really distracting. I'm completely used to it. Although there are a few weird things. So I think last week you had mentioned that you saw someone on Twitter say that the notch, how does the notch interact with the display? Would the cursor go around it? Would it go through it? I think you said, whoever reported that on Twitter said that it would act as if the notch was part of the bezel, so it would go around it.
I can't remember. I thought someone said, according to some Apple employee, that the cursor, I think, would go behind it, because that was the debate, was would it go behind it or would it go around it? And I think I heard, correct me if I'm wrong, we have the replay, but I think it goes behind, right? Is that how it works?
Either way, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the report was, because it does go behind it. So it's as if the notch isn't there. So when you take the mouse and go through, it just disappears for a second and it comes back on the other side. I don't know if I love that. That's kind of weird, because it's like, physically there's something there, so maybe it should go around, but that's not a big deal. That's the only weird thing I noticed with the notch so far. Actually, no, there's another thing. The menu bar is pushed up, which is great, so you get more screen real estate, but it really bothers me that for whatever reason the menu bar is slightly bigger than the notch. So it's not like the bottom of the menu bar ends where the notch ends. It's also a little bit below the notch, which I don't understand what that is. I did the different scaling and it didn't change any of that. That's just kind of weird. It's a little nitpick. It's not really a big deal. We've already seen some utilities out that will make this a completely black area if you want to do that. So notch is not a big issue, but literally every single thing else about this computer is awesome. The screen, the 120 hertz display with the mini LED, it gets bright. The first thing I did was booted up YouTube and went to find an HDR video, loaded it in 4K HDR, blasted the 6-speaker system, and I mean, it's everything I was hoping to be. The screen is awesome. Speakers are awesome. Keyboard is great. I mean, it's about as good as I was hoping it would be. The only thing I haven't been able to do is really test the performance. Now, we'll talk about that in a second, because there's been plenty of other people who have had their embargoes lift and have now had the computer since it's out. And basically the performance is great. I haven't personally been able to test that, but from your, living vicariously through not only me, but everyone else who has now had their MacBook Pro, what are your initial thoughts?
I mean, the design looks fantastic. It's nice to see the ports return. I feel like
Oh yeah, I didn't even mention the ports.
everything about this is great. I feel like the only gripe, if you had a gripe, it's going to be with the notch on the top. But I feel like that's one of those things, like on the iPhone, you just sort of get used to it and it just sort of goes away.
Exactly.
My only question for you, which I didn't really see covered that much in the reviews. Granted, a lot of the reviews this year were very not even reviews.
I think it was rushed. They didn't have enough time.
Everybody was busy. I get that. Tell me about ProMotion. So I heard mini LED display is great. It looks fantastic. Size looks great. Do you notice ProMotion or not? And, you know, as everybody would love to see this on a spec sheet and like, oh, Apple's got to do it. Okay, they did it. Do you think it's worth it, or do you think that this would have been a great Mac without ProMotion on the screen?
So I'll say up front, I'm really glad that ProMotion is here. Although it's not something I'm really noticing all that much. And there's really one main reason for that. On the iPhone or on the iPad, whenever you're using it, you are physically interacting with the screen. And there's a ton of animations. You're moving, scrolling with your finger. So having a really fluid experience is important. But when you're on a Mac, there's not that many animations. Really, it's when you open and close a window, when you're scrolling on a web page. And besides that, that's kind of it. So most of the time, it feels kind of static and normal like it did before. That being said, though, I'm happy that it's here because when you do get those animations and when you are scrolling, it's noticeable and it's nice. And it just adds on top of it, you know, having the mini LED display, which is very contrasty, very vibrant, and also very bright. And then adding the 120 hertz on top of it. I'm happy it's here, although I will be testing whether or not there's a decent or noticeable battery difference between 120 hertz and 60 hertz, because personally, the way I've been using it so far, if there's a noticeable battery gain from having it in 60 hertz, I might keep it there because the 120 hertz doesn't affect the Mac, in my opinion, as it does on the iPhone or the iPad. But yeah, I'm happy it's here. It's kind of interesting though. Now this display, and I guess the one on the iPad Pro as well, is actually kind of better than the Pro Display XDR, although obviously it's much smaller, less resolution. But from a spec standpoint, we got to get ProMotion on that Pro Display.
There's got to be a change coming with Pro Display. Maybe we talk about that later because there were some rumors on that sort of morphed into iMac stuff.
Yeah, we should definitely
my other question, since I'm just curious, I've got my 16-inch MacBook Pro in front of me that has the refined keyboard. It's better. It's great. What's the keyboard situation like on the new MacBook Pro? Is it the same as what was on the 16-inch MacBook Pro, or is it different? Because I couldn't really tell because Apple said, oh, we're going to take the standalone Magic Keyboard that they sell wirelessly and then put that in there. How does it compare to the one we had in the MacBook Pro before?
I'm going to have to do a headphone change because my AirPods keep disconnecting. I missed half of that question. So let me switch to my AirPods Max.
No problem.
We can keep this in because this is live. This is how it works when you're having a Bluetooth. All right, you're talking about the keyboard.
Yes.
And basically, what was the last part of that question?
How similar or different is it to the 16-inch MacBook Pro keyboard that I think is really great? See, let me just, this is why I switched away from the AirPods auto switching, because it never works.
I know.
Or it
so
connects
annoying.
or disconnects you when you don't want it to, and it doesn't work when you want it to. So
yeah.
What they really need,
I'm back now though.
They need you to, they need multi-device support, which I don't know why isn't there. But anyways, how similar or different is it to the keyboard in the current 16-inch MacBook Pro? Because I really like that keyboard, and I want to know how this new one compares, if it's different at all.
I don't know. Maybe technically it is different, but it doesn't feel any different to me. I guess the closest comparison, because this is basically a 1-to-1, it feels exactly the same, is the new iMac keyboard. So the keyboard that ships with Touch ID now, it feels exactly the same as that keyboard. And when I compare it to my 16-inch, it feels basically the same as that as well. There's just no touch bar. But I really do enjoy the black finish that you have here. I think it looks so clean. It looks really nice and really makes the keyboard kind of almost sunken in there. It's a cool look. I will say it took me a second, which is kind of weird because I don't use the touch bar that often, but it took me a second to, like, I went to go change the volume once, and I guess on my 16-inch, even though I don't use it as a laptop that often, I'm used to just kind of sliding and like tapping, and I went up to change the volume and I did that exact move, which is weird. I don't know how that's ingrained in my mind, even though I really rarely actually do it that way, but I think Touch Bar being gone is still overall a good thing for this keyboard. Touch ID is there, it works. I also saw some reports that maybe there was a backlight on Touch ID. I have not noticed that.
Yes.
Maybe it's there, but I just haven't gotten there. So there's another question possibly answered there.
So here's my other question for you. Speaking of clamshell mode, I have always primarily used my MacBook Pro in clamshell mode. And I think that a lot of people are buying this machine, similar to us, where they want the power and the performance and they like the display, but they don't necessarily ever even really want to use it. So I know for me, I went with the 14-inch model because I have no need for the 16-inch display. I'm never really going to use it in laptop mode, or I guess very rarely. It takes up more space on my desk. I can get the same performance for the most part. We'll talk about that in a second, but 14-inch seems like the way to go. You had told me before that it's almost like a crime if you were to use this in clamshell mode. What do you mean by that, and what are your plans moving forward? Are you going to put this up with a larger monitor and sort of use it as a desktop-esque machine, or are you going to embrace the mobile lifestyle and go all in on laptop mode?
Well, I'm not going to go all in on laptop mode because, I mean, just the amount of work we do, the kind of work that we do, all this video editing, although the screen on this laptop is excellent, I still just need that size. It's just something you can't really get around for the work that we do. But basically what I meant by that is the screen is so good. I think you'll feel the same when you see the screen for the first time. It's just, it's very vibrant. It's very responsive because of that ProMotion. It just is a really good screen. It's kind of like, I don't know if you've used the M1 iPad Pro with it's very similar display. It's got the Pro Display XDR or whatever. I forgot what they call it.
Liquid Retina
XDR,
whatever they call it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you've used it. It was kind of the same experience where, like, okay, am I going to say that this is like a leap from no retina to retina? I don't think it's that big of a leap, but it's noticeable in day-to-day. For instance, you can probably see it if you're watching the video version, but it's a cloudy day or semi-overcast, and the clouds keep going by, and then the sun keeps blasting in, so it looks a little bright in here. But every time the sun goes in, my main monitor, which is right here that you can't see off camera, is very dim. It's like, I think it's 500 nits max, which is very typical for a third-party display. But my iPad Pro, which I'm kind of monitoring everything on right here, is 1,000 nits. And every time it gets sunny, my kind of main display here gets a little dim, but my regular iPad Pro here looks perfect. That's one of the benefits. And it's like, it's not a difference between retina and not retina. It's not that big of a difference, but it's so much more helpful that I love having that kind of feature. Now, that being said, here's the question I have for you, because you are going to use this in clamshell mode.
Yep.
Why get this instead of waiting for presumably a new Mac Mini or iMac? When probably, I mean, there's a good chance like an iMac comes out, it could be the same price, maybe even cheaper.
So great question on that. So a couple of things. One is that I honestly would have loved a Mac Mini because that's really all I needed was a desktop machine, and I would have bought that if it was coming. But I guess, okay, it is coming, but we don't know when or what the performance is going to be like or what the thermals are going to be like or what the limitations. So I think as of right now, it's nice to have that. Also, I do want the portability of a MacBook Pro. I'm not saying I'm going to need it all the time, but it's nice to know that I can disconnect this and go work in the other room. My hope is that this is good enough that I could, figure out a way to dock all this with one cable so I can just unplug, go edit on the couch, come back, and, transfer things over as needed. I'd love to live the one cable life. And then regarding the iMac, I'm all in on a larger screen iMac with a higher resolution, sort of like this Pro Display XDR. But in my current setup, as of right now, I have this dual vertical monitor setup that I don't want to give up. And even if the iMac came out, depending on the screen size, I don't know, I'm not always a fan of the iMac with the big bezels, and I'd rather have a wider display. So I kind of like being able to choose my own display and choose the orientation and go crazy and add more. So I kind of like a more small, compact computer that's out of the way that gives me sort of the flexibility to have those displays. And then the other thing, of course, is I just want the power. I have this Intel i9 MacBook Pro that's been giving me a lot of weird issues. I have it on an eGPU right now. I'm just, very curious to see what the performance of this is going to be like. I never used M1, and I figured, skipping from sort of the entry-level M1s with the MacBook Airs and the iMac, this sort of seemed like a great jumping in point, and then maybe in 2 or 3 years I'll sort of reevaluate what I want to do. But for me, it's just nice to have that flexibility. I think that's I'm be tempted by an iMac or even a Mac Mini, but I think we always say this too, and everybody always makes this point, like you can't wait for the promise of this future technology that may or may not come. So I would bet money that a Mac Mini, a higher end Mac Mini, hopefully knock on wood, is coming maybe in the spring or summer of 2022, but we just don't know. So just right now you got to get what you need, and that's my choice. I know we had talked about this for you too. What's your work setup like, and how does this MacBook Pro fit into it, if at all, or are you maybe waiting for another higher end iMac?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm so conflicted because it's like I do want a new iMac because I love that form factor. I want that power, which I'm assuming is going to be M1 Max or M2 Max or whatever they call it at the point. Like it's going to be the desktop level of what we have now. So I would love to have that, and I love the display tech that they have. And I would assume that if they do come out with an iMac, there are some rumors of this, that it would be kind of a liquid retina XDR type display. So that'd be excellent. I would love to have that. But I do actually travel quite a bit. Now, do I ever do work on the go? Not that much, but it definitely happens enough where having a laptop is important. Now, I'm also one of those crazy people that I would love to just have both. Let's do iMac and MacBook Pro and sync stuff between them, and then never really have to, worry about that one cable life because it's just 2 separate computers. I would love that as well. Yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of a weird time to be buying computers right now because it's almost like the MacBook Pro came out and it's like, oh, this is so good, I got to get it. And then like I feel like when the iMac or Mac Mini, whatever comes out, we're going to be the same way. Like, oh, this is so great, we got to get it. Like,
guaranteed.
It's because it's so good and so many different changes compared to the last changes that we've had throughout the years. Like from 2016 in the MacBook Pro lineup, like the changes year over year have been so boring and often disappointing. But now it's like it's hard to pass up. So at the very least, I'm trying it now. But I'm very similar to you the way I'm using my computers now. I have my 16-inch MacBook Pro. I'm pretty sure we have the same spec one. I have my BenQ monitor, which is a Thunderbolt 3 display, which is actually my favorite Thunderbolt monitor that I've been able to find that isn't a Pro Display XDR. So I've been sticking with it, even though, I mean, overall, I don't really love the display, but it's just like the best one I found. I like it better than the iMac and the LG what do they call it? LG Ultrafine
5K.
Yeah, I like the way this monitor looks better than that. And then I have like the CalDigit Thunderbolt dock so that I can have everything plugged in because we have a bunch of drives, all that kind of stuff. I'm pretty sure our setups are almost exactly the same.
An octopus,
exactly.
Or what is it, like tentacles of cables? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so that's kind of how it works. And then I also have like a T3, T5 drive. If I ever do need to take my laptop out and work with it, then I'll work off of that. So, I mean, it's a pretty standard setup for using a laptop in desktop mode. And I kind of agree, though. It would be nice to have this power right now. Instead of waiting, because especially for you, I haven't had nearly as many problems as you have, but I know you complain about the problems you're having with this MacBook all the time. And actually, almost every time we finish with this podcast recording, if we stay on this call and then start to export the video, your computer crashes every single time.
I wish there was a way that I could replicate this in a step-by-step way, but I can't. But all I can say is that, to make a long story short, if I'm doing anything that's somewhat processor intensive, like exporting a video or on a Zoom call with other programs open like Final Cut, or even if I'm just scrubbing through, like last night, I was scrubbing through some clips in Preview in Final Cut before I'd put them in the timeline, it just crashes. My mouse will freeze up, my keyboard will stop working, and then it'll be like 2 seconds, then the fans will just ramp up to 100 and then off. And then it kernel panics and reboots. It's not a thermal thing. I've checked the thermals and the fan speed, all that's fine. The fans are obviously working, they're kicking on at all times, they're always like 100%, everything's fine. It's just something I feel like
it's got to be that eGPU.
It's not I had this problem before the eGPUs. It's not the eGPU.
Okay. Well,
I've tried to like dig through the code of the kernel panic. I can't figure it out. I posted like on Mac Rumors forums, no one was any help. So honestly, I feel like this is more of a lemon, but it's going through the trade-in, so it's going back to Apple, so it's their problem. And I'm excited. I never, besides like very brief periods, never covered or really got to use for an extended period of time M1 Macs. So this is kind of my first experience with Apple Silicon. And now I get to kind of have that supercharged with sort of the M1 Max. And I guess interestingly enough, not only have we learned a little bit more over the last couple of days about M1 Pro versus M1 Max versus M1, but also surprisingly, there's a decent chance by the time you're listening to this that you could probably walk into an Apple store and get the configuration you want. Because surprisingly, unlike iPhone models and Apple Watches specifically, there's a pretty good stockpile, at least at the stores right now. So it's going to vary day by day and location. But if you want sort of a entry-level 14-inch, or I think they have like 3 or 4 configurations of the 16-inch, you could probably go in and get that computer if you're willing to kind of live with the specs that they have on hand. So maybe if you're waiting and you have a longer pre-order window or I guess longer order window and your delivery's out a few weeks, check your local Apple store because you might just get lucky and they might just have it in stock. But that's kind of the thing. Did anything stand out to you in terms of any of the videos you saw about performance? Because I know this has been a very hotly contested topic. I've seen some really interesting benchmarks, then some weird benchmarks, and I feel like for us, or at least for me, I can't really get a handle on it and know until I run it through our specific workflow. So I'm really waiting till I can kind of run it through a couple Apple Circle videos and some other stuff. But did you have any kind of general thoughts on M1 Pro versus M1 Max? You have the 10-core
right
M1 Pro.
Yeah.
Did you obviously you'll have more time to test a little bit, but kind of any thoughts initially on performance or M1 Pro versus M1 Max? Anything sort of stand out to you during those kind of embargo videos that dropped?
Well, personally, I just haven't had enough time because like I said, we've been working and I've been basically just trying to set it up. Every second I get, I run over. Like I installed Final Cut Pro, then I went and worked a little bit, and then came back, installed Telegram. Like I'm going through it like that.
Yeah.
I will say though, I have not plugged it in yet. It was not full when I opened it out of the box. Obviously, it was like at 70%, and it is barely at half at this point. So
Crazy.
and the screen's been on basically the whole time. It hasn't been doing anything intensive, but the battery life so far way better than anything I've experienced on the 16-inch. The 16-inch MacBook Pro, or the older one, the Intel version, the battery life is so bad. Like
yeah, it's
almost
good
unusable. Yeah.
Good luck trying to step away and do anything on it. So.
Exactly. So far that is really promising. Also, I have not heard the fans kick on. If they have, I haven't noticed at least. So that's good. Although again, haven't really done anything in system. But from the embargo videos, I think Tyler Stallman did a video that's kind of aligns with what I do at least. So he's a photographer and videographer. He makes YouTube videos and he does photography and video for a living. And he opened up Lightroom and showed the SD card reader and the performance. He ended up using ProRes in Final Cut Pro, which is a program both of us use every single day, and he had like 6 streams of 8K ProRes running at high quality at the same time. Then he opened up Lightroom and a bunch of other programs, and it was still running no problem. He also mentioned he edited the entire video on one battery, which is unheard of, like I said, for the Intel versions of these computers. I use that as an example just because it's very close to the work that we do. So that is very promising. There is something though about this high power mode, which Apple didn't talk about at all, but we did get word before these computers came out, and now we've seen a few videos on that. What is this high power mode doing?
Essentially, from what I understand, and actually John Morrison from TLD did a great sort of breakdown I watched yesterday, it seems like it just sort of allows the computer to run at peak performance, pushing peak power for an extended period of time. So it's not like a magic switch that you flip that immediately like supercharges your computer, but it just allows it to run, I guess, at peak mode, kind of, I guess, for long periods of time. I'm really sort of unclear or unsure right now exactly how this works and how it's supposed to sort of work long term. And that was one of the things when this started to leak out. I'm like, oh, should I have gotten the 16 for the high performance mode? Do I need to have that? But it doesn't seem like it does all that much yet, unless you're maybe really pushing this thing. So I'm okay with sort of sticking with my 14-inch for now and not having that high performance toggle. But I guess it's nice to know that it's there. I really don't understand why it's not in the it's only in the 16 and not the 14. Maybe something with the thermals, or I guess how much power the computer can actually push at once. But it seems like a nice little way to sort of give you a little bit of a boost if you're going to be doing something for a long period of time. But it's not a sort of a magic flip of a switch that sort of changes everything. So, yeah, don't worry if you have the 14-inch. Don't worry if you don't have it.
Yeah, that was kind of the question, like, because this was not something that anyone knew was a thing until the pre-orders went live. So everyone, or not everyone, but a ton of people ordered the 15-inch because, like we mentioned, most of the specs are exactly the same on both. Or, besides battery life and capacity, you can kind of get a 1-for-1 on both computers. So I think a lot of people are like, well, I'd rather have the portability. It is a laptop. So they got the 14-inch. Then we got word of this new feature, and it was a little worrisome. Like, man, did I make a mistake? I should have got the 16-inch. I think that's still yet to be seen. It doesn't really seem like it, at least from the initial test. The question I have, though, is why is this not available on the 14? And also, since this is a Mac, could we get it on the 14 through some third-party kind of thing?
Well, that's what's so weird, too, is because they can be spec'd the exact same with the M1 Max and 64 gigs of unified RAM and all the cores. From what I understand, it seems like it's something with either or a combination of the power the computer can push and then maybe something with the thermals. Like there's just more room for that air to sort of move around in the 16-inch. I'm not sure, but I hope, or I guess I wouldn't be surprised if that comes down to the 14-inch, or maybe the 14-inch doesn't need it. I'm not sure. That button is sort of like this mysterious, sort of like a Tesla button. Like you don't know when you press it if it really does anything or not.
Exactly.
So who knows?
Yeah, but I think besides the button, like even if that button didn't exist, the initial impressions are that these are extremely powerful computers that are extremely efficient. And I think I said this last week, and it still holds true. And I've seen a bunch of other people say this, but if you've been editing on an M1 machine, a regular M1, not the Pro or the Max, I mean, for a lot of people, especially if you're in the YouTube space, it works perfectly fine. I had never run into a bottleneck. I always wish there was more power just to see what I could do with it, not because I needed it. Like, okay, maybe the export times would be faster, that kind of thing. Like nothing that really would affect my workflow overall. And that's just on the M1. So any more headroom for me personally is welcome and is more than I actually need because I've tested it and the M1 is fine. So having this much more power, I'm super excited to use it. For you, though, I think you actually are a better test case because I don't really use that many plugins. I use kind of like the native features, like I'll use titles and stuff, but that's pretty native and built in. You use plugins like Motion VFX, which, I mean, praise to you because Motion VFX, I mean, it's great software. Like the effects are really cool, but in terms of killing your computer, it is the best at that.
Yeah, I know that they are now, I think most of their plugins are now M1 optimized, and I have yet, again, to try an M1 version of Final Cut with Motion VFX. But on the Intel side, I remember with my other laptop too, man, they are great plugins, but they will use all the CPU and RAM and GPU, especially the GPU, that you can throw at it. And that's kind of why I have an eGPU under this laptop right now and why I wanted to have sort of the higher end CPU and GPU combo, because I have a feeling that these plugins are going to utilize all of them. So I have a lot of weird, like I have this loop deck buttons and programs. I like to do a lot of plugins and stuff. So I'm very curious to try it. And I will say, to your point about, who should buy it and who shouldn't, if you should wait, if you want to make the most objective and the smartest and most informed decision, then really you should wait until the end of 2022, because by then, supposedly the new iMac Pro will be out, the new Mac Minis will be out, the Mac Pro will be out. So if you really want to see what the entire Apple Silicon lineup is going to look like, and you don't know how much power you will need or not, then if you can wait until the end of 2022, then make your decision. But if you're someone who is needing more power than an M1, or you need that higher refresh display, or you want the sort of the pro features of the MacBook Pro, then buy what you need now, and don't wait out on the hope that, this is going to happen, or Apple's going to release a 32-inch iMac that's going to have slim bezels, or we were burned on that in the past before. So
exactly.
Definitely get what you need now and don't wait. But if you can wait, then obviously wait till the end of next year, and then you'll see the entire roadmap.
Yeah, and I guess maybe to piggyback on that in a little bit of a different direction, something that we kind of talked about, and it's generally a good thing to do, is whenever there's a first generation of a product, you don't want to jump in as soon as possible if you're a general consumer. Like, we test these things for a living, so we're willing to take that risk, and we kind of know what we're getting ourselves into. But if you're just looking for the computer you're going to use for 6 years, like, maybe this isn't the one to get. Like, okay, so the M1 is the first of the Apple Silicon computers, right? And I know I told a lot of people, at least, and it was kind of, I mean, they were great. They were great computers, but we all knew there was going to be updates to them relatively quickly because they were the same designs as before. They were just the chips built in there, so we knew there was going to be an update at some point relatively quickly. Now, you could say that this is the second generation of that M1 chip, but also you could say this is still a first generation product that maybe you should wait and see how it pans out. Now, do I think Apple is going to go back into using Intel and not use Apple Silicon anymore? Not anytime soon. I highly, highly doubt that. But there could be some issue that we just don't know. Maybe for, I mean, this is crazy. This would never probably happen. But like, what if in 6 months, for whatever reason, these M1 Pro and M1 Max chips just like fry and they just don't work anymore? I mean, it's possible. We just don't know. And I guess you don't really know that with any computer. Like, it's possible with any time. But considering these are so new, and yes, the M1 was a computer before this, but these are still new computers. Unless you absolutely need a new laptop, if you're happy with what you have, I'd say wait it out. But at the same time, I'm also a huge hypocrite because I love this thing and I'm not taking it back.
Yeah, it just I cannot wait to get my hands on it. I think mine is like, I don't know, in 3 weeks, whenever Apple figures out when they're gonna ship more of them. But I'm excited. My kind of last final question in terms of first impressions. Talk to me about the 14-inch, because I know a lot of people who got the 16-inch, and kudos to those people. But do you think that's enough screen size? Do you regret not going 16, or do you think that 14 is the way to go?
Well, I think there's kind of two ways to look at it. I like you, me, Ralph, who is he's our CFO now. No, not CFO, COO.
COO. He's our Jeff Williams.
I'm still getting these corporate nomenclature under my belt. But he also is in a similar situation where a lot of the time it's going to be in clamshell mode. Mm-hmm. So in that case, it's like, well, get the beefiest computer you can get. It's going to have that high power mode. Like, it makes a lot of sense. If you are someone who is using it as a laptop a lot and primarily, like if this is your main computer and you don't plan to dock it to anything else, also another reason, maybe you should get the 16-inch because you'll have that bigger display. But that's also kind of, it really depends how your workflow is. Because for me personally, I mean, I guess if this was my only computer, maybe I would get the 16-inch. But the 14-inch portability makes it worth it for me. I mean, I don't know. I think you have, but you've traveled with a 16-inch before, right?
Yeah, I remember. I do some flashing back to CES of 2018. No, 2019.
I think it was 2019. Yeah.
One of the last CESs we went to, I was doing some editing on like one of those like press tables. You're like shoulder to shoulder with everybody. This is all pre-pandemic, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, this laptop is massive. It's huge. There's all this metal. It looks great, but it's huge. And then like it's just so heavy to carry around. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to go 14 is like, I'm not saying I'm never going to not use it in laptop mode, but when I do, now I can actually carry it around and not break my back and have something that's just a little bit more portable. And I don't know, the screen real estate was nice to for me to have, but I feel like that 2 inches you lose, I think it's going to be okay. I think it's more than enough in Final Cut. And I think that the trade-off for portability and a little bit of a less bulky, cumbersome computer, for me at least, and maybe for you, is worth it than to have the extra 2 inches of screen size plus a high power mode. Because essentially, again, you can spec these the same, so you're really not missing out on any performance issues or anything like that, or you're not missing out on performance gains, so you'll probably be okay. So I'm excited for 14. I've never had a 13-inch laptop myself. I've always had the 15-inch or the 16-inch, and this is my first time kind of going small, so I'm excited to try it out.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think that all makes a lot of sense, and I still think 14 is the way to go for most people. It's those specific cases where 16 is the way to go. I think to wrap this all up for the M1 MacBook Pro, or M1 Pro MacBook Pro, we have a comment from Jack, who is a new listener who we mentioned at the beginning. He wrote a lot, We really appreciate it. We did read through it. Said some very nice things. We're not going to read the whole thing here, but to kind of wrap it up here, he says, in conclusion, this new MacBook Pro is a game-changing laptop. Apple has completely changed the rules in the pro notebook industry, and they are groundbreaking machines. And I completely agree. I think the processors, bringing the ports back, which obviously is kind of silly. They kind of made that issue on their own, but the ports are here again. The battery life, everything about these computers, the screen, everything about them, except for maybe the notch, is as good as a laptop has ever been, and hopefully it only goes up from here. Super happy with this computer, and I'm really looking forward to actually doing work on it, and we'll probably update you as time goes on, and actually when Robert gets his machine, so we'll talk about that. But okay, let's talk about something else. The next most anticipated product, maybe even more than the MacBook Pro, the Apple polishing cloth. Did you get an Apple polishing cloth?
No, I did not spend $20 on a polishing cloth. It looks nice. I've got a bin of microfibers that are just fine. I think we talked about this before. I mean, this is like one of those weird things that I don't know why Apple sells it. I guess they just because they can. Someone said, I don't know if this is true, but someone said this is the same polishing cloth that they have internally for their employees to use at the store. So maybe they already had them. But I did not purchase one. Matt, did you? Did you get your hands on one? I think some stores had them available today. So maybe if I run out, I could go get one. But who knows?
So no, I did not get a polishing cloth. I didn't really think to. I saw that it was available. I really had no idea that they would sell out. And I think it's mainly it's
a joke.
It's a joke, yeah. Everyone seems to be hyping it up, but it's obviously a joke. What I will do instead, though, this is my grand plan. I'm not going to be able to get this polishing cloth because it's sold out. I'm going to just have to buy a Pro Display XDR because it comes with one of these. So that's kind of the only choice I have. $20, $6,000, you know. What's the difference?
I guess, and to your point about that, I know you're like the person I know who wants one of these most. I see so many people buy them, and I love the subreddit of Mac setups. Some people have like the Mac Pro plus the dual Pro Display XDR.
That's the dream.
Great. So I'm sorry to tell you some bad news. Well, I guess some good news or some bad news. There were rumors, I think, like at the end of last week, that Apple was going to make a lower cost Pro Display XDR. It was going to be 27 inches. It was going to be mini LED, 120 hertz ProMotion. Fantastic. It sounded really great. And then there was some clarification that this is probably just a new iMac, probably the iMac Pro. So good news that the iMac Pro continues to be in existence and at least is somewhat closer to finally being released, so that's nice and should have a really nice display. But separate Pro Display XDR, there were those rumors that Apple was going to release a lower cost version. Then it was like, no, it's just an update to the Pro Display XDR. Maybe your best bet at this point is just to buy the iMac Pro or whatever Apple calls it, because you could probably get that for like $2,000, $3,000, and then still save a couple $1,000s from not spending the $5,000 or $6,000 for a Pro Display XDR. And maybe you'll get most of the benefits, maybe even some better benefits, maybe a little bit smaller, but ProMotion. So there you go. And mini LED.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it could actually end up being the best way to go is you get the iMac with the mini LED display. I guess they would probably call it a Liquid Retina XDR. Would they call it a Pro Display XDR? Probably not.
No, I think that the Pro Display will remain
its own thing.
Special name, and then you'll have the iMac with the Liquid Retina XDR.
Yeah, so I totally think that's very possible, and that's probably the best way to go. Although my kind of dream setup is this 14-inch MacBook Pro plugged into a Pro Display XDR, so I have the portability, but I have the excellent screen. Because really, the only reason I want this iMac Pro isn't because of it being an iMac. Like, that's not really the reason I want it. I want it for that excellent display. So if I can have the best of both worlds, I'm definitely going to do that. But yeah, you're kind of right. I think if this iMac comes out, it's going to be significantly cheaper than buying a Pro Display XDR.
Yeah. You get a computer.
Exactly. Do you think they will introduce a cheaper version of a standalone display? Because those rumors just keep going back and forth.
I think that maybe, but at this point, I feel like they have bigger fish to fry, and I feel like they need to get through this Apple Silicon transition first. I guess it could be argued that they really didn't need to spend their time making multicolored HomePod minis, but maybe they have their own priorities inside of Cupertino. But I would say that yes, eventually. But I think that maybe what Apple's thinking is, kind of like our thought process. If we just release this iMac Pro that's 27 inches, it's cheaper. It's got a new computer, guts of the Apple Silicon inside. Maybe people will just buy that instead. So I would hedge my bet that we definitely see the iMac Pro before the lower cost Pro Display XDR, and I think it's in the cards. I just don't think it's happening. I would probably say we're not going to see it in 2022, maybe in 2023, but I don't think it's anywhere near launching in the next 12 months.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. I guess the only argument I see to releasing that is that they are going, or they currently do, and they're going to presumably update the Mac Mini, which doesn't have a display. So it's like almost a slap in the face to say, here's the cheapest Mac, and here's the only display we sell. It's like,
I mean, they're pretty. They have no shame doing that now.
No, they don't.
You can do. Cause I don't know if they did it with the Mac Mini, but obviously you can drive a Pro Display XDR with your $900,000 Mac Mini. Let's buy, instead of 4 more computers, let's buy a $5,000 display.
Yeah.
And like you could drive 2 or 3 on the MacBook Pro. So definitely more of a niche audience for that, but I agree, it looks great. It's been a while, right? It's been out for like 2 years,
2019 with the Mac Pro, so yeah, it's been a little while.
So it looks very nice, but hopefully one of these days they'll either have some kind of discount or the new generation will come out. Then maybe that's what you gotta wait for, is the next gen to come out, and then these will kind of come in the used market and you can save $1,000 or $2 and call it a day.
Yeah, no, that I can. This is what I'll say. I see one in my future. I just don't know when, and I don't know how much money it's going to cost me to receive that display. But I want one. Every time I see someone buy one, I just get super jealous. What else happened? I mean, a lot of stuff happened because of the MacBook Pros, but also not a lot happened because it was just the MacBook Pros.
I can tell you about the forgotten product.
Well, let's do it. I obviously forgot.
3.
Yes, I forgot about it too.
3. I know. I think this is just because. Again, I love to comment on the Twitterverse and like the tech bubble of Twitter. Everybody's AirPods Pro, so no one really cares about AirPods 3. But if you didn't like the fit of AirPods Pro and you want spatial audio, then here you go. Here's AirPods 3. I mean, I got to admit, I think I watched like one video. I really didn't care too much about this. I mean, they're better. They've got the MagSafe case now, better battery life, design. I think that if you want AirPods Pro or AirPods 3, both of them are fantastic options. Obviously, there are rumors that AirPods Pro 3 AirPods Pro 2 are coming sometime next year, so maybe wait on that. But I feel like, if you want to do some holiday shopping and you want to go either AirPods or AirPods Pro, none of those are a bad way to go. But the big difference, obviously, is noise cancellation. If you're a fan of active noise cancellation or transparency mode, go AirPods Pro. If they don't fit your ear, go AirPods 3. You'll be happy. Did you get AirPods 3, Matt, at all?
No, I didn't. Although I might do it because I'm definitely gonna have to take my AirPods Pro in. I talked about this a few episodes ago, but every single time I put them in, no matter what device I'm connected to, well, first of all, half the time it doesn't connect, and then I have to go in manually and connect it. And then once they do connect, either there's a few issues. Either one will connect and the other won't, or they will both connect and it will be in a weird kind of off state rather than the transparency or noise cancellation. And it infuriates me beyond when it basically feels like I put earplugs in for no good reason. Like, just work. They worked before. I tried resetting them. It doesn't work. So it's obviously an issue with mine. So I'm going to go get them fixed while that fix program is still available. But I
wonder if there's some sort of weird issue. I wonder what the quality assurance, or I don't know, whatever the
control
acronym, QA, quality control, the QA is for AirPods Pro, because it was funny. My wife got a brand new pair of AirPods Pro a month ago, and she's been having weird issues too, where one will charge full and then one will not.
I've heard that from the very beginning. Like, people have always had that issue.
I'll put my AirPods in her case and they charge fine. So it's not the case. It seems like it's the AirPods themselves. So we took them in, and the genius is doing the whole song and dance about the diagnostics and stuff. And it's so funny because, there was just a headline that Apple extends the AirPods Pro repair program for the static, that people are like putting them in their ears and like there's like this weird static. And apparently it's a big enough issue that Apple has extended the service program even longer to get warranty claims fixed on that. And it was so funny. I'm sitting there at the Genius table. This guy walks in, in. He's got his D brand case.
He's an enthusiast.
Wrapped AirPods Pro. He's an enthusiast, and he's sitting there, and the guy goes, "Oh yeah, like what's going on?" He's like, "I got this weird issue with my AirPods Pro. Every time I put them in, I got this weird static that happens for like 3 to 5 seconds." I'm like, "Oh, there's another one for the service program." So, I love AirPods Pro. I have not had an issue with mine, but my wife has had issues with hers. You have issues with yours. I feel like you can get a lucky pair that don't have any issues, but more often than not, they're fantastic, and I love them. But there are some issues with them. Definitely some weird software charging quirks.
Yeah.
And pairing quirks that don't always work. I even have occasionally where one will pair and one doesn't. Then you got to put it back in the case and close the case and wait 3 seconds and put it back. That can be a little annoying because like there's no physical toggle. But I still love them. I'd still buy them in a heartbeat if they broke.
Okay, that's exactly what I was about to ask you. I will say before I ask you that though, I do think it's high time that Apple makes a dedicated app for AirPods so that you can go in, you can force reset them, you can update the software, you can check the status of the battery or somewhere.
Even in settings, yeah.
Because there's always like you see on Mac Rumors or whatever, there's like, oh, they released the update for the new AirPods Pro. And then you just kind of have to wait. You like kind of hope and pray that the update's going to come to your device and there's no way to even check unless they're finally done. And then you can see the new number there. I think it's about time that they do that, especially with the AirPods Max, AirPods 3, AirPods 2. I mean, they have so many different versions of these at this point. Like it's time they do that. And then also, you know, they have all these accessibility features now where you can do, I forgot what the actual word is, but it's got the enhanced voice feature.
Yeah, voice enhancer. Yeah.
So it's like, it would be nice to have that all in one place where you can see every single thing you could do with AirPods. I hope they do that. I don't know if they will, but I hope they do that. The other question though is, okay, your AirPods Pro break today. Would you go buy them again? Wait for 100%. The number 2? Would you wait and get like the regular AirPods again?
There are very few Apple products that I am okay with buying again and again and again, and even upgrading. iPhone, upgrade every year because I'm obsessed, and usually there are cool features that are worth it. Apple Watch, not every year, but I probably didn't have to jump from 5 to 7, but I did because I wanted the bigger display. I use those 2 every day. They're worth it. AirPods Pro as well. They're not cheap at like $260, whatever the price is. They're not cheap. I will give you that, but I use these for probably at least 2 to 3 hours every single day. That makes it worth it for me. That if they broke tomorrow, I would go out and buy a new pair because I rely on them that much. And if I went out and bought a new pair tomorrow, then the week later, AirPods Pro 2 came out, I'd buy those again too because that's how much I love AirPods Pro. There's just very few pieces of anything in my life that I rely on that much and I'm willing to like spend the money on because just feel like a lot of times it's a waste. But AirPods Pro are one of them that this is one that I love so much. It's so sort of ingrained in my daily life that 100% I'll buy this 10 out of 10 times again. So
yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of, so like I said, I don't know. I have to go get these repaired, and they're really good about the repair program because I got them repaired once before because the same issue. Well, it was a different issue, but similar issue. And they just did it right there. So I walked out with a new pair of AirPods Pro. So I won't be without them if I do get them fixed. But at the same time, I'm almost like maybe I should try the AirPods 3 because I really loved the original AirPods. The fit in my ear was perfect.
Yep.
So it's like maybe I'll give them a shot. I agree, though, if these were completely broken and they really didn't work, I'm going to replace them instantly. Like I'll go out today and buy a new pair.
See, AirPods 3 is tempting me because I agree. I loved the original fit of AirPods, and I think spatial audio is awesome, but I have become so dependent on transparency and noise cancellation. I think I use both equally. I love transparency and I love ANC that I don't know if I can give that up, especially flying at the gym. If even I'm like taking a walk outside, I love noise cancellation. Like when I'm doing dishes, just to sort of drown out the water running and all the other stuff. I think I'm too addicted to those pro features to give them up. And in my opinion, what's the price difference? Like $80?
Yeah, something like that.
I think it's worth it for a lot of people. But if they're not comfortable, which is the biggest issue, the silicone tips just aren't comfortable, then AirPods 3 is the way to go. You're missing out on some features, but I would much rather take comfort than features. And luckily for me, I have not had an issue with AirPods Pro fitting. My wife, she was also on the fence because she's like, I don't need transparency. I don't need active noise cancellation. I'm fine with the regular ones. And then I got her the pros, and now she's like, oh, I love them. Like, I love the noise cancellation. I love the transparency. I don't even think she knows how to switch them out of noise cancellation. She just always a noise cancellation, but she loves them. So definitely, I wish there was like a trial thing where you could like try both. I guess you could always return one. Apple's pretty good about that, but definitely sort of see your use case and see how they'd work. I never missed ANC with the regular ones, but once I tried it, it's really hard to go back. So it kind of just depends, I think, really how they fit in your ear.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to try them. I think the reason I'm not in the same boat as you is because I have the AirPods Max, which I was using until they totally failed me today. I think that's more of a MacBook Pro issue. Another thing, Bluetooth on these MacBook Pros sucks. I don't know about these new ones. I'll have to test that, but that's aside. So when I'm around the house, I'm using AirPods Max. Those have the best noise cancellation, much better than the AirPods Pro. They're really comfortable. So I'm using that around the house for the noise cancellation. And then these are really my go around town and use headphones out and about. And whenever I'm out, I actually don't use noise cancellation. I like to hear what's going on around me. So yeah, I think I'll probably end up giving them a try. If anything else, just because these are having issues and maybe it's time to try. It's been, what has it been, 2 years since these came out? So
October, it was like right after my birthday, late October. I think it was October 30th, 2019 they came out. So we're approaching, I mean, by the time this episode's out, we're like about, probably by the time you listen to this, we're 2 years past the original release via a press release of AirPods Pro. Who would have thought that this crazy update that really brought a lot of cool features was a press release? So maybe we'll see, hopefully, new AirPods Pro.
Well, there is
early 2022.
Yeah, there was a leak, though, of an apparent, I don't know if...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so apparently it's a case that looks just like the AirPods Pro, but on one end, there's a little metal loop for like a lanyard. So if you want to attach it to your bag or your pants, or I don't know what you do with that lanyard, but something like that. And then also little speaker grills at the bottom for presumably Find My support. So you go into your phone, you lost your AirPods, it'll now throw that chime out, which I thought it already did just through the AirPods themselves.
I don't think so. And that's like what frustrates me most about this is they have Find My, but one, maybe this is fixed, but the location like rarely would update as I drop them. They would rarely update, so they weren't all that useful. And then I don't know if you could play a sound, but it never played an audible sound for me. With a speaker built into the case,
let me try right
play
now.
An AirPods, play a, what is it, man? So many air things. Play an air tag chime that I could actually find, build in a U1 chip inside, and then you're golden.
All right, so I'm in the Find My app right now. I got my AirPods Pro in front of me. Obviously, they're not lost. Okay, they're in the case, and it says play sound. Let's see what happens. Play sound. Play sound. All right, it says connecting. They're in the case, so technically they're not connected. Okay, so it says sound pending, will play when connected. May take up to a minute. So basically, the way I understood it before is that if the AirPods are out of the case and they're connected to your phone, then it'll work. And yeah, it says attempting to connect. So now let me take them out of the case and see what happens. Play sound. All right, still nothing. Because they won't connect, because they're broken, like I told you.
Every time I've ever lost my AirPods, they are closed in the case and they're not on.
Exactly.
So it's useless. So that's why I'm so excited about this idea of a speaker.
I don't know if
I
came
didn't.
through. There you go.
Okay,
it's making a little noise. It took forever, but I guess it kind of worked.
So I think that if you put them like in lost mode, then someone walked by and was smart enough to open them, then maybe you'd get the chime or whatever. But who's going to open it? That's like the biggest issue I have is that they're always like lost with the case closed and they're like hidden somewhere and the location doesn't update and they won't play the sound. And
they're also
AirPods Pro fixes that.
There's no, as far as I'm aware, there's no activation lock on these. So if someone finds them, they're taking them. Like they're gone. So
yeah, technically it's just you can reset it right on the back end. You're done.
Yeah. If I ever lose these and they're really lost, which I've never actually done, they're gone. I don't see how I'm going to get them back.
I wonder if we see a U1 chip in AirPods Pro that would obviously solve a lot of these problems, like the location stuff and with Find My support. I guess
it does have Find My.
Okay, no, there is now Find My support, but better location tracking. And wouldn't the U1, if it was like the AirTag, where the AirTag you technically cannot factory reset, you have to actually go in and remove it. I wonder if that's coming to future AirPods Pro, because that would make sense.
Smart.
It's like tied to the iCloud account. So.
Yeah, that would be smart. That'd actually be a very good way to go about that, so that you know they are yours, and you can't really unpair them. I'm sure there's probably still a way to do it for headphones. Like for the tracker, I understand because there's no interface to it, but there is some kind of interface. There's a port, there's a button, there's got to be a way around it. But
I'm sure there's a machine out there that'll do it. But so AirPods 3, the Cloth, and MacBook Pros launched. It was a busy week, but also that was kind of it. Like that was kind of all the news cycle in like a couple of days with those launches. Matt, any final thoughts, or are you eager to get back to that 14-inch and actually try it out?
Sitting here waiting for me to start using it again. I think I set it up as fresh, but I think I might go back in. I want to try, first of all, that new refresh reset feature that they announced, where you can, instead of having to go through, not terminal, but you have to go to the recovery mode and then delete your drive. And then they actually did a new feature where you can just kind of reset the computer, which I don't know why it took them this long to do that. Like, I just realized now that we've been resetting computers in the most annoying way since forever. So I kind of want to try that. Also, I might just go through and do a one-to-one conversion from the computer I have now, so that I can really just get in there and start using it instead of having to wait and set it up. We'll see how that goes. But either way, yeah, really looking forward to trying this out. But did you the listener, did you get a MacBook Pro? Are you looking to get one soon? We'd love to hear from you. We heard from Jack, who sent us a paragraph. I'm looking at it right now. It's funny how big it is. We
appreciate it. Thank you.
We love it. It's great. Like every week we're like, did we get anything? And then we open it up and it's like kind of hit or miss. And then we see something like this. It's awesome. We love that support. But anyone else who did get this computer, has thoughts on it, let us know at that hotline. Again, that number is 949-354-3508. Phone call, text, anything. Go visit us on Twitter. Watch the YouTube video version. All of that is in the show notes if you're listening, or it's in the description if you're watching. And now we're really to that point though where it's kind of the lull. We got all the products out, and now it's kind of it. So I guess unless we can get our hands on that polishing cloth, we're kind of out of luck for the rest of the year. We're gonna have to figure out what to talk about.
Yeah, so come back next week and see what we can sort of scrounge.
We'll figure it out.
In the news. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching, listening. We appreciate it. Leave us a review on iTunes. 5 stars really helps us. Leave a little comment. We appreciate it. And as always, thanks so much for watching, listening. We'll see you guys right back here next week.